All right, hello, what's up? Here today to talk about my Shaper 100 runs experiment that I did to see whether or not it was profitable. Seemed like the logical next step after doing, 120 Shaper Guardian maps. I had the fragments in my stash tab. I was like, why not buy a bunch more? I'll go do 100. I at first was gonna do 1,000, but then I quickly realized I was not gonna do 1,000, so I just did 100. So just a quick little sneak peek of the profits. Here's my wealthy little exile pool. You see here I have 135 divs that I made, and might be a little more. I haven't actually liquidated everything yet, and you can see here that the profits were mainly in fragments and raw currency. Um, but we'll talk about that in depth in a second. So why would you farm Shaper? Where does the money come from? So there are a few avenues where you generate most of the currency. First is the raw loot drops themselves. So Shaper drops, I think, guaranteed one of the unique items in its pool, which is like its boots, gloves, amulet, and then the flask. The boots and the amulet, I'm pretty sure are trash. The Shaper's Touch is nice for when you corrupt them, and then Dying Sun, the ruby flask, is worth like 7 divs at least. Um, so let's talk about them. So first is the Dying Sun. I dropped one of them. Oh, and Orb of Dominances. So we'll talk about the two. So the first is the Dying Sun. In 100 runs, I only dropped one Dying Sun, and I actually perfectly rolled it for in the like bad way. I rolled a perfectly shitty uh a Dying Sun, and so I sold that for 7 divs or 6 divs or something to get it off my hands. Because I was like, if anybody even bothered to look at it, if it wasn't underpriced, they would not want to buy this. So sold that for really cheap. Orb of Dominance, I dropped 3. They're normally worth 2.2 divs, but I sold them in bulk 3 for 7, so it got a little bit extra there. The Shaper's Touches, you should corrupt all the Shaper's Touches that you find. You can find quite a few good ones, so let me showcase some of the ones I was able to sell. So here you can see here I have a +1 socketed gems one that sold for 40C. I have a attacks of critical strike chance one that sold for 1 div. Probably could have went for more. This is a really high roll. It goes up to 0.8, but there were a bunch of 2 div ones up on the market, so I just undercut them a little bit to get it off my hands. Because I want the currency fast. Got a temp chains one, sold for 1 div, and then some of the more expensive ones I got was an LA weakness one with almost perfect armor ES rolls that sold for 5 divs. And I was surprised this one sold for more than the LE weakness one, because I personally thought LE weakness was more more in demand than this one, but I sold in a feeble one for 6 divs with a mid-range roll, and that was really good. I have a few more that I dropped here and there, I think, in my stash. I'm sitting on a perfect cast speed one, and I have a few bricked ones that actually have interesting rolls, trying to sell them for 100, and then let me see, another max ES one, and some socketed duration ones that are not even selling for 30C. Um, anyways, those are the loot drops from Shaper. The second thing is that you want to sell the favorite slot. So Shaper unlocks a favorite slot on your map device. So I think it's one of these here. I don't know which one it is, but it's just one of them. And people want the favorite slot because then it boosts their map drops for whatever strategy they're running. But a lot of builds that focus on mapping and clear don't have enough DPS to kill a boss like Shaper, so they buy it off of TFT or Trade 820. And so a big part of the currency that I was generating was every time I ran a Shaper, I would go on Trade 820 and be like, Shaper run going on right now, 40C. If you want, just PM to join or whatever. And every 15 minutes, because they have like a timer in TFT or whatever, but every 15 minutes, I would copy paste like a big thing. It's like, want to sell soft core, Shaper slot, 40C, PM, or whatever, right? And I wouldn't wait for someone to get into my party because you would still want to blast through as many Shapers as you can. So I would just like type in my stuff, and then I'll just immediately blast Shaper. If I get a customer, great. If I don't get a customer, like whatever, that's fine. And that was a big part of like how I generated all my currency. You can see all this. I converted them all to divs already. Maybe a mistake because they're still dropping, but whatever. But like I dropped 64 divs worth of chaos. Actually, a little less, probably like 50 divs worth of chaos. The third thing, and this one's a little pocket change compared to the previous 2 things, but you can also sell challenges. So every season, there's always some challenges related to Shaper. This season, there's favorite slot, which kind of just is merged with the favorite slot thing above. People want them anyways. But there's also one called Peddler's Produce 2, where you have to turn in for an Exalted Shard recipe. And so Exalted Shard recipes come from influenced gear sets. And so Shaper drops influenced items. Shaper influenced items. So what I did was that every time it dropped amulets, rings, and belts, I would immediately pick them up. And rings and belts would generally go into my dump tab. You can see here I have a few that I was sitting on. Amulets are rarer. Every time I got an amulet, I would immediately then pair it up with a belt and rings, and then I would start picking stuff off the ground. I wouldn't flood your inventory with the armors, like the weapons, armors, boots, gloves, head, etc. Like I would wait to pick those up until you get a full set of jewelry, and that's the way you can be really efficient with it. So that's like the main ways of how you're gonna run your shapers and like do all the side stuff to like make it profitable. So I'll look into the profit calcs right now. So you can see here 80 divs alone from fragments. That'll be important later for when I talk about like not even like doing minimum work. 49 divs was from selling the runs and getting raw chaos, and a few, I think 7 divs in here are from the ruby flask also. So yeah, so total is 135 divs, but it's a little higher because you can see here the Shaper's Touches says it's only worth like 5C. Definitely not. I got at least 10 divs worth from the Shaper's Touches and, and also the Ruby Flask. So we can add at least like 10 divs or somewhere into there. I will have to take out, I do have to take out 5 divs though. I have this Offering the Goddess I forgot to uncheck when I did this pull. And those I'm just saving for like an Argus run someday when Argus is in room 1, so I can ignore that. But if we round it out about the differences, it'll be about 140 divs. If you calculate it, the cost of running the maps is 0.4 divs per map. That's how much you can buy in bulk on TFT for like 20 shaper sets at a time or whatever. If you buy them in singles, you might be able to get a better price, but I just, you know, the convenience, I bought in bulk from TFT. So 140 divs minus the 40 div input cost goes down to 100 divs per 100 shaper maps, because that's how many I ran. If we do unit conversions, one shaper map for me was equal to 5 minutes. That's how fast it took me to run a shaper map in general. And then there are obviously 60 minutes in 1 hour. And so if you do the conversions, like shaper maps will cancel out here, minutes will cancel out here. So now you have divs over hour. If you do the calculations, the hundreds cancel out, so it's just 60 over 5. It's about 12 actually. 12 divs per hour was how much I was making, which I think is really good. And that's more than double the amount that I was making off of the Shaper Guardian map farm that I was doing in my previous video. And, you know, if you don't think Shaper is mind-numbing and you can, you know, maximize your efficiency with doing the peddler's produce, selling the runs, and etc., then I think you could generate maybe even more than I did, especially if your runs are lower than 5 minutes, because I think with really fast gear you could get down to 3 or even 2 minutes. But one thing I really want to talk about is that even if you didn't do a single outside activity from just running Shaper, you could make profit. What am I talking about? I'm saying you are unlucky, like you didn't drop a single Ruby Flask, no good corrupt Shaper's Touches, no Orb of Dominance. You didn't get a single customer on TFT and Trade A20, or you didn't want to do that. You would still make money, because if you look at the fragments here, the fragment of Shape and Knowledge, 40 plus 36, 76, 76 divs are guaranteed, because when you do Shaper, you're guaranteed one of these fragments, right? So if we change it all, we change this to 76 minus 40 is 36. So you do 36 in this equation instead, and this I will have to probably calculate it out. So let me do 36 divided by 100 divided by 5 times 60 is about 4.32. So it'll go to 4.32 divs per hour. And that I still think is pretty good if you like just want to turn your brain off, chill, farm Shaper or whatever, then you'll make 4 divs per hour, which I think is fine. But if you do the other stuff that I talked about, then you can boost your profit all the way to 12 divines per hour, which I think is good. So that's that. I'm gonna talk about Shaper for a second. So like I said, it took me 5 minutes, and I would not say my build is super optimized. 2 things that you can do to maybe make more profit than I did. First is that you want a fast movement skill setup for phase 1 when you have the 4 bosses, and also the transition phases when you're in, like you get TP'd out into like the passageways or whatever. So I had a pretty slow leap slam setup that I was using like my offhand. I was using a Bright Beak plus a Prismatic Eclipse to like get faster leap slams or whatever. I actually only too late realized that if you change the lightning warp, it'll be a little faster. But like some of you guys might have builds that are just fast in general. So if you have that, then you can speed through all the information type stuff and save a bunch of time. Also, if you have more damage than me, my damage is not like amazing. I, for example, only phase out Shaper 50% of the time. What I mean by phase out is that like you make him transition, and you avoid the portal and the bullet hell phase. If you, those two phases, like, you can't damage him, it's just a time suck, and you're losing time on your runs. If you can, the second he becomes targetable, you just insta-give him to like 50% HP in phase 1, or phase 2 you get him to 1/4 HP, then, you know, he will just start transitioning immediately. He'll start waving his hands or whatever, you get TP'd out. So if you're fast, and if you do a lot of damage, like more than me at least, this will also be way faster, and your profit per hour will go up. But yeah, that's what I've been doing to generate currency for the past few days after my Shaper Guardian map farm. If you have any comments, questions, leave them down below. I'll catch y'all next time.